Right, welcome to our lockdown chat series. I'm Celia Hogan from Little Kiwis Nature Play, and we have a wonderful chat lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about how we can bring nature in when we're teaching virtually. And I know there are a lot of teachers out there who are doing this, but I also know that there are some who are not yet doing this. So we are hoping that these ideas and tips and actual practical ways of how are going to really help you to help the students that you're working with. So let's kick into it. I think we'll start with a brief personal introduction of each person on our panel today. And Dani, would you like to kick us off, please?
Sure. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko appellation a manga, ko Pacific Te Awa, no America aho. No reira na mihi nui ki na tangata whenua o tērā whenua, the Lani Lenape. Ke te noho aho ki Wanganui I Naene. No reira na mihi nui ki te tangata whenua o tēnei whenua, te Ātihau Nui Paparangi. So hi everyone, I'm Dani. I'm from America originally. I grew up in New Jersey, playing in the Appalachian Mountains, and I run the Eco School in Wanganui with my husband and my children. And we do all sorts of, our main goal is making sustainability education accessible to everyone. So we do permaculture courses, we do internships, we do forest schooling stuff, and I'm currently the forest school educator at Wanganui Intermediate School. So we run a forest school program through the mainstream school there. So that's me. Kia ora.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dani. And we'll head over to Anne.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Maunga Ika toku maunga, ko Potomac toku awa, ko Te Moana Nui a Kiwa toku moana, ko Air New Zealand toku waka, ko Anne aho. Hello everyone, my name is Anne. I am part of a team of ladies who are the directors of Conscious Kids, which is we're 100% nature-based programs that run in school holidays, and also one-day programs where kids come out of school, ages 5 to 12. And we also work with schools to help schools run outdoor classroom days and run some professional development for teachers who want to make use of their outdoor classroom. I also work with Longworth Education, supporting teachers who are implementing learning through play practices in their classroom. And I'm happy to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you, Anne. And over to Kirsten.
Kia ora, ko Kirsten aho. I am from Waiheke, and I run a facility here called Talking Tree Hill. And Talking Tree Hill is 18 acres of land dedicated to healthy children and a healthy planet. So we run one-day schools out here, we run after-school care, and we're also running research projects in schools at the moment, trying to get in nature play and nature education into, our big aim is into every school in New Zealand at some stage. I think all four of us have probably got that same thing. Talking Tree Hill came about from me being a registered teacher, which I still am, and being in the teaching industry for over 20 years. And I just wanted to look at how we could best give back to our children and our planet. So that's what we're trying to do. Oh, and by the way, happy Earth Day. It's Earth Day today.
Yes.
So sorry, I was meant to lead with it. Then I was listening to everyone's mihis and I was going, I got waylaid. But yeah, happy Earth Day, everyone.
You know what? I was so meant to introduce it as Earth Day.
yeah.
But anyway, you know, that's how things happen on these lines. Cool, thanks, Kirsten. Ko Celia Hogan, toko ingoa no te tahi aho. So I'm from Christchurch, and I run Little Kiwis Nature Play. That kind of leads on from about 15 to 20 years of working in the outdoor education industry. And Little Kiwis Nature Play, we help educators, teachers, parents to use nature and get their kids outdoors playing. I'm very much for unstructured child-led play, love risky play, I love advocating for it. I like to challenge our kind of leaders of the country on these kind of things. And I also run professional development training for teachers and helping them to set up either nature programs inside their centres or schools, or helping them get out on excursions and really connecting to their local environment and their place. And yeah, I think that's it. Oh, one last thing actually I'll talk about, we run a bush kindy playgroup for whānau and preschoolers, and that's that's really awesome, and that's building confidence in parents to get their children outdoors, and really also advocate for that when they get into schools. They're just saying, actually, we really want to have our children spending time outside. So, and add a bonus that the children are having a fantastic time doing what they do so well. Brilliant. Right. So I think that that kicks us off into the first round of tips. And how we're going to do this, everyone, is we're just going to go around each person and give a tip. And there might be a little bit of conversation in that from within our panel. If you have any questions, please ask so in the chat room, and we'll try and come to those if they're relevant, or save them to the end. But also maybe while we start talking, put in the chat box, maybe are you currently, I'll assume most people are teaching virtually at the moment, but are you using some ideas to help get your students outdoors and into nature through this time, or are you needing help? Let us know in the chat box where you sit. And I think first up, we are going to head to Dani for your first tip or piece of advice. Dani.
Cool. So I guess when I was thinking about the question about bringing nature into education, I thought about my experience in the classroom as a classroom teacher and why I was drawn to get into forest schooling and nature education in the first place. And so I kind of was thinking about the theory behind why I believe that forest schooling and nature play is really good. So if we think about forest schooling, there's kind of three ideas that underpin forest schooling. And one is risky play, what Celia was talking about. One is nature immersion, and the other is risk-taking and child-led learning. And so when I was thinking about, okay, if we have children who don't have access to nature right now, who are either living in cities or for health reasons or for safety reasons can't get out into nature, can we somehow instill those underpinning values of forest school in the curriculum that we're delivering to them online? So I was kind of thinking about it that way. How could we incorporate risk-taking? If we don't have the nature immersion aspect, how can we incorporate risk-taking and child-led learning into what we are offering to our students? And I think one way of doing that, there's lots of ways of doing that, but one way of doing that is through bushcraft and weaving, raranga. I'm a huge fan of bushcraft as a method of teaching, and I think that there's so many resources out there for good kid-friendly bushcraft activities that don't need many resources. So using just, there's an awesome book on EPIC right now. If your kids have access to the EPIC library system through their schools, there's really cool books on there about tabletop catapults and tabletop defensive strategies and stuff like that. And so they can make catapults out of popsicle sticks and rubber bands, out of straws, out of things that you would have at home. For us, we've been doing a lot of bushcraft with stuff we have out in nature, but if you don't have nature, I think you could use those same principles and use pencils, use skewers, use all these different kind of materials to do those kinds of things. So then you're getting kids working with their hands, appreciating different materials, the uses of different materials, that problem solving aspect, and something they're really engaged in. So I think that would be my first tip, would be to go online, look for some bushcraft videos. You might find some on some of our websites, you might, and just seek those resources out, because I think that can be a really exciting way for kids to engage in problem solving, math, science, etc.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's great. And I think a lot of us here are quite crafty as well. So I think there's some really good ideas either coming from any one of our websites or Facebook pages as well. I don't know if any of you saw, but from Craft Lab, he just put on Facebook this morning that he's going to be on the TV school. What's it called? I haven't even.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, whatever it is, the thing that's on the daytime, for school. So I think he's going to be on that. So if your children are using that medium, he's going to have some fantastic stuff available as well. Anyone else want to add anything there before we move on to Anne? No? Cool. Okay, Anne, take us away with your tip.
Okay. So I looked at this. Well, first of all, just wanted to say well done to all of you teachers out there. I've been looking at it through the eyes as a parent mostly, and working alongside teachers as a coach with Longworth, and trying to see how to support you in what you're doing. And it is a challenge, and I've been really impressed to see what's coming through from my kids' schools and how much effort the teachers are putting into it, and really trying, just I can see the effort is there, and I know that a lot of you have your own children at home, and we've all got so much going on. So well done, and hopefully this is just a little bit of help that doesn't just more information overload you. I know that these ladies have amazing ideas for the activity side of things, and I'm super impressed with what they have available on their websites. I thought, well, what is it that we promote at Conscious Kids, and what do I promote in working with teachers who are teaching through play, is that the environment is the third teacher. So this idea that your environment, part of what grounds us in what we do at Conscious Kids, is that the environment there is so stimulating and is full of loose parts, and it has so much to offer as a learning environment, because it's always changing. It's always it's never the same, it's never static. So there's just more to learn climbing a tree than there is a climbing frame. But when we're working with teachers, we're usually saying, well, look at your environment, and it's not your environment now. It's their classroom is their home, and it's their backyard. So I was thinking of, well, what are the ways to influence what's available to them in their backyard, on their street, within their neighborhood, within their bubble. So I was thinking about, how do you support parents to increase the number of loose natural parts in their backyard. So maybe encouraging kids on their walks to bring home some interesting leaves you found, or some pine cones you found, or some some old flax fronds that have fallen over, and we might bring them home and just see what we can do. So just increase the number of loose parts, particularly if your kids live in a place where maybe they don't have a yard, or maybe they only have a patch of grass, and that's all. Maybe they don't have any trees or a slope or something quite interesting for them. They need those loose parts to make that outside space appealing. If you're finding that if you want to encourage kids to be outside, and you're thinking, okay, it's good, it's going to be good for their mental health, let's give the parents some tips and tools for increasing the variables in that space, even if it is just a little patch of grass, or even if it's just a balcony. We can bring some things back from our walks, and then we've got some interest and some creativity that can come from just a little pot of shells from a walk to the beach, and that nature is all around us. That's the other thing is at Conscious Kids, we operate in the local area, and we don't have one set site. We go to different sites depending on the weather, depending on the environment itself and the conditions. So all around you, right outside your doorstep, is nature. Underneath your doormat is going to be nature if you pick it up. So just supporting kids being interested in that nature that's in their back garden. I think being interested, and supporting parents with some tips of where to look for that nature, even if it's just under a rotten piece of wood in your yard. Even if it's nothing else, there will be nature there, and it might be a bit gross, but nature will be there for you.
Absolutely. Hey, and I'm not sure if any of you ladies saw, but about a week or 10 days ago, I did a Facebook Live on backyard play. Backyard outdoor play, and that could lead on quite well for some ideas of things that Anne was talking about. Does anyone else have any resources on their website that they want to share that's specific to what Anne was talking about there?
No, mine's more out and about, I guess, more than that kind of backyard perspective. I mean, our backyard is fairly big, so we're a bit privileged with that. But we do have some stuff up there that could easily, actually, no, there are some activities. Actually, have a look at the Talking Tree Hill one, because we've just posted up about 50 different ones, and whether that's yoga that you do in the backyard, whether that's a saucer posy. Yeah, actually, we do have some up there that could be quite helpful. And they're like quick 5-minute ones as well, so you can get there and be a good provocation for more. Yeah,
and the key messages with this time being in lockdown is we have to be adaptable as well, and we have to kind of go, okay, well, normally we would all be promoting just being out in nature, being outside, but we have to change the way we see things. So I think it's really good to, what you've said there, Anne, about, going out, figuring out what's in your neighbourhood and bringing some stuff back as a way of bringing it back in. Kirsten, do you want to head off with your first tip?
Yeah, I guess mine is always like a mindset tip. It's about kind of, when I was looking at this, I was thinking about teachers, but teachers also being parents, and families, everyone teaching together, and also that third person being that nature is in the environment. So I think for me was my top tip is actually just put it in as a mindset that, try and get as much time as you can outside per day, because the health and well-being and the social and emotional development of children is definitely what we need to be focusing on now. And by simply saying, do you know what, we're going to go out and do our nature hour now, or we're going to go and I'm going to structure this for my kids that I'm either teaching online from a teacher's perspective. If you're putting your planning out there, when you're putting your planning out there, make sure that there is an hour in there that can be used, and finding activities to do that. So I'm kind of taking it right back to the simplicity of what we're saying. And also I know that the teachers that I've been working with at schools locally on Waiheke, what they're trying to do is they're trying to actually virtually put out a whole day. And that's amazing. That's such a big challenge at the same time. But there are so many different resources that you can find to do that with, and and resources that the schools are linked to, like Enviro Schools is putting out some really good stuff. David Edinburgh is putting out some amazing stuff. Jane Goodall's putting out some amazing, really inspirational things to use. What was leaning to with what I'm saying with this, is like taking a segment of the day or a day, is also that actually use technology within that time as well. So what I sent through to Celia earlier on was that there's some really wonderful apps that can help when you're out there doing things. So I know a lot of what we're moving into next week, people will be able to get out a bit more. And we've always, we've been allowed to be on walks and things. So I actually kind of had a little list of my top tips of different apps that you can use if you're setting yourself a daily challenge or a weekly challenge to spend more time outside. Like, I'm going to find 5 native trees or birds around my home or in my neighborhood or on my walk. Is that you can use different apps as provocations to help with identifying things as well. So it's kind of taking technology into those spaces in a really friendly way. So we use, and I know Celia you do as well, is the iNaturalist New Zealand website, and there's an international one. And that's really great because you can upload photos as observations and get help identifying species from different experts, like at DOC or whatever. So, like if you don't know this stuff, you can send it out for people to play with. My Nature Animal Tracks is quite a fun one to look at as well. That's more of an international one where sometimes you're out and about and you spot animal tracks, or you've got those in your backyard. Remembering that nature's coming in to our backyards and into our days in a lot of different ways. We're getting more birds, we can hear more as well. So maybe you want to actually look and use an app like My Nature Animal Tracks that might help with that. Also, Butterfly Collection is another beautiful app, and that's where butterflies and insects in any garden and park, or if you're walking somewhere, and it has like sort of 240 different species of butterflies. Kids love classifying, collecting, identifying different, schemas like that. So when you are out having this time, what is it that you've got there? Because some of those can really help children who are a bit older as well, rather than just a lot of young children are often happy just playing outside and doing those things. But sometimes you need those kind of app provocations that can help with that. So it's like using the virtual and nature at the same time. And I'm not usually a massive advocate for that, but I think in these circumstances it could be really helpful because as what Anne's saying, if you're in your backyard or a bug comes into your house, okay, you can't get outside, but there's a bug. Maybe you can use something that's actually still interacting with nature like that. Like, ooh, what's that bug? And I know that I did that with my boys, and we actually spent the whole week collecting different bugs and made this thing up, which was, it was quite unreal for me to do that. But, use those apps, and Seek is another one, and we can put those up in the comments anyway, or later on post those up. But really just, I guess to summarize that is that, try and find those pockets of time within your day and dedicate it to nature. And I'm talking from a teacher's perspective, and I'm talking about it from a family perspective, because it really is important. And it's a really natural way of feeling good and bringing up those endorphins and things. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say around that.
Fantastic, thanks Kirsten. And I think I'm going to just kick straight in with my tip, because it pretty much is very similar to what you're saying, and it just leads on. It's just really encouraging teachers committing to having nature as being part of their virtual teaching plan. And so it depends how teachers are doing this, and how old your children are. If you're kindergarten, you're probably not creating a plan like that. You might just be offering invitations. So some of these ideas could be helpful, but for a lot of school teachers, they are kind of structuring a day, or at our school, the teacher's just sending out one email a week on a Monday morning, and that is just some ideas, examples of things that they could have a go at or try if they want to. So there are a few different models, but what I'm imagining is that an email goes out, because I don't think you can actually virtually teach nature that easily. You could sit here and do a Zoom call, but that could be a bit crazy. I think Anne's going to give some other tips maybe on that, but let's say you're sending out an email. Maybe it is that you can send out an email and offer up some different ideas or invitations that they could do. I'm very much about free play, or children leading their own play. And so these ideas could be starters. They could just be things that children start outside, and then they get carried away and move into another type of play, and that's fine. They don't have to complete them, but then there will be children who will go, right, I want to complete this. So it will kind of cater for the concentration levels of different children and the urges, how they're actually wanting to play. So I'm going to share a couple of ideas around this just to help. So I was thinking, finding patterns, shapes in nature. So Anne suggested going on neighbourhood walks. What kind of patterns can you see? How many of the same patterns do you see on your walk? Or shapes, how many square shapes, how many hexagon shapes, how many circular shapes, the different colours. And, if some children love to kind of sort and organise that, and that's a schema, so you could extend that or offer an extension if needed. And that's covering areas of, maths and literacy and arts and science. So there's lots of different things in there if we think about it in that way. If as a teacher you're wanting to kind of tick those boxes, that's how we can think of that. It could even be measuring your street, like, who's got the longest street in the class, and measuring it with your step. And then figuring out, okay, well, how long is my step? Is my step, 30 centimetres, 40 centimetres? How many steps does it take to get to my street? And having a wee measuring challenge. Or it could be measuring the circumference of your house. Maybe it could be observing the leaves falling in the trees, and if the children are a bit older, and creating a dance that tells the story of the leaves falling. So there's a few kind of inventive ways that you can think up, even an inventory of the insects in your backyard. Like, that could be quite fun. That could send a child off on many different kind of areas there. Creating an art installation, so everything the children have gathered from going on their walks, how can they create something artistic out of it? What could they do? So having just a few of those kind of ideas to offer for children who need that. But I do very much support the just committing, if you're offering a schedule, having an hour or 2 hours of the day where they are free to play or to be outside. And if children do struggle with coming up with their own ways to play outside, those kind of ideas could be helpful. Cool. Anyone else want to add anything there?
I've got an idea.
That, Andy Goldsworthy.
Dani, then Anne. Yeah. Go, Dani.
That Andy Goldsworthy, the eco artist, is a really good inspiration for that kind of activity. So he'd be a good one to look up if you're not familiar with him.
Fantastic.
I'm always thinking about how are we going to have things be child-led, and how do we, especially if we're currently utilizing play-based pedagogy in our classroom, how do we carry that on? Because there's amazing activities, and they may be really appealing to kids, like you said, Celia, based on their schema, their urges. But how do we find out what they're interested in outside? And so I was just thinking, as you were talking about the all those great ideas, is that we could also ask them to, because kids love mystery and like a bit of intrigue and a puzzle to solve, and each of them could choose something in their environment, something in nature and then give clues about it to the other children. So that way they can choose something. We create a framework and we said, this is going to have a mystery, something mysterious from nature that you found. And so they each get to bring what's interesting to them outside from their outdoor environment, and then give clues about it. And that's kind of something that the whole class could do, that would allow a bit more, open-ended in terms of them choosing the thing that's interesting to them. And yeah, that might be a way of just looking for ways to bring in their own interests into it as much as we can.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Thank you. Right. We are on to round 2 of tips. So we figured that we would have time enough for 2 tips each, and I think it's going to be exactly that. So Dani, I'm going to head off to you for your second tip, please.
Cool. I have so much to say though. I'm going to squish
I
them all into
know,
one.
it is
I know, it's hard.
All right, so kind of zooming back out again, going away from these kind of activity-based thoughts, I'm just going to zoom back out again and talk about some more theory, because again, when I was thinking about this, about nature education and why it's important, I was thinking about kind of people or theorists that I'm drawn to. So one book I would say, if you have time to read now while we're in lockdown, one book I would suggest reading is David Orr. He's the author, and the book is called Earth in Mind. And it talks about what an ecological education would look like, and what do we do to educate for ecological citizens or ecological literacy. It's amazing, but super transformative for me. In a nutshell, he says that there are a lot of things we need to do to educate for ecological literacy. And so I think that we can also look at this time during lockdown as a way of front-loading some skills and information that will allow kids to connect with nature when we are able to do more nature immersion programs. And so he talks about an understanding of the natural world, including natural science, physics, just an understanding.
Oh, we've lost Dani there. I wonder if Dani's going to come back. Right, what we'll do is we will let Dani get her IT stuff sorted, and we will move into Anne. Anne, take it away. I'll drop Dani a text, she might not know.
Oh, I'm sorry?
Oh, Dani, you're back. You kind of cut out there for a while.
Oh, sorry. Am I here again?
You are here. Okay, we'll go back, Dani. Do you want to...
Our internet is so bad. We're on rural internet, and it's just...
Yeah, we are too.
Sorry, so I was
in
saying
and out.
that...
Our last 30 seconds or so.
Okay, sorry. So I was saying that David Orr, this theorist, he talks about ecological literacy, and kind of the main principles that he's getting at is an understanding of the natural world, so natural sciences of physics and how how gases change to vapor, how ice freezes, how leverage works and pulleys. Also a focus on problem solving and holistic thinking. So if we can think about those things, and generally when we are creating activities as teachers, because we're thinking about the curriculum, we create a maths activity, a science activity, a literacy activity, and we're kind of learning that the more we can integrate these things together, the more holistic the learning is, and it creates a thinker, a child who becomes a thinker of a holistic world. And that's what we're looking for when we're looking for ecological literacy. So one thing I would suggest would be to look at your day and think about doing a more integrated plan, project-based plan, ideally child-led, project-based plan that isn't segregating their thinking into different areas and is kind of boosting these skills that we can preload into them, so that when they go back out into nature, they have a little bit more of a concrete understanding of how the world is working around them. And then again, kind of thinking about that theory side of things, there's a really beautiful educational theorist called Wally Penatito, and he's a New Zealand Maori theorist, and so he talks about place-based education. And this kind of goes back to what Anne was saying before about here we have this opportunity where we are in our place, we are in our actual backyard, and we have to be, and so let's take advantage of that. And so if you a lot of his readings talk about the importance of place-based education in an Indigenous framework, and why that's important to Indigenous education. So I would suggest looking at local stories from your local, so not just Maori stories, but your local, what are the stories from your place, and how can your kids connect with that? Stories from their families, local tongatakaro, are there games that were played in your region or songs from your region itself? and getting the kids to identify the natural features they can see from their backyard. So not just local flora and fauna, but can you see a mountain? What is the highest hill you can see from your house? What is the closest water source to where you live? And doing these very, very local based education, because that sets them up to understand their place in the world just a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
Beautiful.
And we've got a few comments coming in asking for some of the links that people are sharing and the names. So maybe if everyone can take a mental note of what they've said, and we'll either share those in the comments or pull them all together for a separate post in the event. Okay, so we've got that message. Thanks everyone for your comments there. Fantastic. Right, on to Anne now.
Cool. Well, I just want to piggyback on what you were saying, Dani, about your local stories, because that immediately made me think of my amazing 92-year-old neighbor, Una, who has lived in this house next door to us for, I think about 50 years. And actually no longer than that, sorry, because she raised all her 3 kids there, and her, she's got her grandchildren and great-grandchildren now. And so she actually holds a lot of the stories of the street and the little reserve down at the bottom of the hill, and where her kids played. And we have to be very respectful of her bubble, obviously, but I call her and I talk to her on the phone quite a lot, and she drops off, she says to the, tells us when she's got something for the kids that's outside, and we pick it up from the letterbox. So so that type of thing is hopefully happening in our communities. But how are we going to know about it as educators, thinking about us in the teacher role, and how do we, what is our intent behind our virtual teaching? I think a lot of my ideas came back to, well, how do we signal to our students that that this is important to us, that we think it's important for them? Like, what messages are we giving families and students right now about what we think is important? And I know that you'll have constraints around what your whole school is doing, what your call is doing, and what you're expected to do in your role. But also, hopefully, you'll have a bit of leeway in terms of what you signal to your families and your students about what you think is important and what you value for them right now. And conversation is really, conversation about nature and about being outside in those stories is what is kind of what underpins our pedagogy at Conscious Kids, is saying we have that time to have a conversation and hear about what's going on and hear what they're thinking and hear things about, like, oh, our neighbor Una, blah blah blah. So I thought maybe considering how we communicate with our students. I know for my son, he's got a small group Zoom with his teacher, but even thinking an individual time more than a group, you might need to have an individual conversation, and then you could ask those questions. What is in your backyard, and what's in your yard? What do you see on your walks? And that shows that we value that more than have you finished your worksheets? Have you finished? Not necessarily more, but giving it value as well, because everything we're putting out there to our students is implying value, that we see that this is a valuable thing for them to be doing. So maybe even, making that time to have a conversation with them once a week or every other week, if we can reallocate some of this time that we spend on other things, just to say, I want to talk to you, first of all, is reciprocal conversation, not instructional. And then showing that we care about nature by saying, do you get to be outside? Do you get some fresh air? Do you get to move around? Like, it's so important. I feel so good after I've been out on the trampoline for half an hour, and it just feels really good. I feel all that good oxygen coming in, and so yeah, that's where this conversation is taking me.
Fantastic. And I think that's really cool, and I really like the idea you've touched on about connecting one-on-one. And I'm sure that's probably quite hard for teachers, but if it is possible, I think that could be a really cool concept. So have a wee think about that one. Right, over to Kirsten.
Yeah, I really like what you said, and there, just to reference back into the messaging that we put out there at this point, and the messaging when we're coming out of lockdown. So I really agree with what you're saying there in terms of, this is a time where we can have different discussions and really listen, because that's what we're doing at the moment, is listening to our planet, and it's telling us a few things. So what I wanted to do, another top tip that I know our local schools are using, and something we always do here, is we do eco-passion projects. So, you know, if you're struggling to have time outside, you know, we're saying let's have this mindset where you're going to do that. And you know, Anne spoke about it, Dani spoke about it, so Celia, about being child-led. Well, an eco-passion project is just that. A child finds something that they're interested in. It could be a bug that they've found, and then they research and discover what they want to around that. So the passion project might last for a day, it might last for a week, it might be what happens with my boys, and it was meant to be like make a hut for one of the kind of holiday program things that we did the other day. And you know, I was expecting it to be an hour, and it went on for 4 hours that day, and then the next day it went on for a couple of hours. So really finding something that's an eco-passion project as well. So that's also the messaging around that. It's like they find something interesting. So I'm going to give you an example of what my Leo is doing. For some reason, he found out about albino bats. And I am not sure where this came from, but this is our passion project now this week, okay? So I have just made a white silk, like bat costume. He's used that to go outside, and we found out information on it, that they actually make their huts out of leaves. So he's gone outside and made a leaf hut. He's then, albino starts with A, so that came from school. So he's tried to write the A, but that didn't work. So he's gone out with clay outside, because that's how he learns, and he's done that. The next thing he's done, and it's, you know, it just keeps going on and on and on. So if you can find something for your children, and I know some schools are doing that, ours are, but even if you're a teacher at home, because that's what us parents are as well, we're our children's first teachers, find that little passion project and give a little bit of messaging in there as well. You know, like for us at this point in time on Earth Day, we know that we want to be practicing certain R's, like recycling, reducing, reusing. We do lots of here. We've got 10 different ones at Talking Tree Hill. But what is it when they're finding these passion projects that you can get that kind of lovely little messaging as well, and say, okay, well, this albino bat, gosh, I wonder if that's protected. I wonder if it's, you know, kind of looking at something that really interests the child, following it through, and sometimes it might not last very long. So some of the ones I've done with children, that's like last an hour. I'm like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do all my time doing this, and all their time was about 40 minutes, you know. So it's having those kind of strategies as well. What I was going to talk about at this point is bringing in more te reo and Indigenous culture, and I really love what Dani and Anne have both said about finding those stories in your neighborhood, and finding those stories that are close to home, and then finding those ones that are regional, and finding those ones that are, you know, this is a great point to take any kind of passion project and put whatever you want to do with it. So be open, like put information out there to children and to parents to say, hey, look, find a passion project, find something that the children are into, and let them run with it. And what can you do to help with that? Can you bring in the stories of our Indigenous cultures or other Indigenous cultures? You know, like, I think that's a really, really important thing to be able to do, is that we're writing a piece of history, a story and a piece of history right now. And how does that look? So if we can take something from this, we can create our own stories around it. And passion projects are a great way of doing that as well. So that's my little top tip, as something to do.
Hey, fantastic. And we've got a couple of comments in the chat box saying that they love the name Passion Project. And I think I have to agree. I think it's a very cool name. It says it all. So thanks for sharing that, Kirsten. Right, we are got a few minutes left. So I'm going to do a super quick last tip, and then we will wrap up. And I'm probably going to just talk briefly about thinking about your why. You know, like previous to this, I'm going to assume that the people who are tuning in here have been quite passionate or have really seen the value in nature time. And it's no different now. And I think we really just need to make sure that we are still following through with the philosophies that we have, and thinking a little bit differently perhaps, but just really trusting in those. Like, we know that nature is essential for not only our physical and mental health, but also our emotional health. So we need to just be committing to sticking with that same philosophy and not feeling the pressure from any parents or other, external pressures to say, oh no, we need a structure for our children. That structure can still have in your philosophy of nature. So just really sticking with that philosophy and trusting in that. Like normally I don't do activities, and it's quite weird for me to have actually suggested activity ideas and invitations in the last tip. And yeah, so that probably doesn't go with my natural philosophy, but I am hearing that some teachers actually just don't know what to do. So if you are struggling, you're going, yes, nature is deeply in my philosophy, but I'm just not sure how to do that here. Have a listen back to this again and just pick up some of the ideas if you need them, or do some Googling, get onto our website, see some tips if you're needing ideas, or like I think, was it Kirsten said, just structure in some nature time every day. Just, stick with that. You need to just commit to keeping up with your philosophy, and that might be a mindset shift for you, especially if you are being challenged by other people. That's very brief, but I'm aware of time, and I would like to give us all one last kind of 1 minute opportunity to do a sum up, and I might do a little time thing just to make sure.
Good idea.
Does that sound all right? And that's just either a sum up, a key message, or a final quick top tip. So we'll start with you, Dani. Go.
Sorry, I muted myself because my kids were loud.
Oh. Cool. You're back.
I like that Zoom mute button, man. I like it. Okay. Yeah, so I think coming off of what Celia said, I'd say think about the purpose of why we integrate nature into our teaching, and see if there are ways that you can creatively integrate those core values into an online delivery, even if you're not able to do it necessarily outside. And then I guess some more kind of like specific activity suggestions would be risky play. Are there ways that we can encourage our kids not to take too many physical risks, but to take academic risks? I mean, maybe physical risks, maybe, like something like doing a box jump. Can you jump onto a box that's this high? How high can you box jump? That's a physical risk, but it's not that risky. Balance beams, stuff like that are not that risky, but they're a little bit risky. Encouraging the kids to still do that, because we don't want them to lose that sense of wonder and risk taking, because it's quite easy to get complacent when we are in lockdown and on the couch a lot. So yeah, that would be my
cool. Well done. Good timing. And
I think I just wanted to finish on my personal experience, particularly if any of you out there are working with older students, or you have your own older kids at home, because my youngest child now is 9. I've got 9, 13, and 16, and they're not really into the mud kitchen anymore. They're not into a basket full of shells. So what I've found is that I still can hook them in. Well, I hadn't done it for a while, but I decided, well, this is a good opportunity to read aloud to them another book, which I had they had sort of moved out of me reading aloud to them. But I said, okay, this is something I really want to do with you. So I'm reading them a book called Watership Down. I mean, any book will do, but I particularly recommend that one for the kind of 9 to 13-year-olds. And so basically, I just read that to them outside every day after lunch. We have lunch, and that's our routine, is that after lunch, because I know when I was a teacher, that was when I always did my read aloud, was when the kids came back from playtime and lunchtime, and I read a book aloud to them. And so just having that, I enjoy that routine, and we're always outside, and we do have a little covered space. So if it's raining, we've still been outside. And it just means that they're out there. Sometimes they go straight back inside after the book is over, but sometimes they loiter, and sometimes they start making daisy chains, and sometimes they lay in the grass, and sometimes they find cicada shells on the fence. And it's just given them that space and a little bit of meditative space. And I know they're not listening all the time to the story, but it creates that slightly meditative space outside. And it's been a way that's been effective to get at least my 9 and my 13-year-old outside, and then I start to see some of their play interests outdoors come through. Otherwise, it's like they're just not interested in being outside and kind of looking for bugs the way they used to be, unfortunately. So yeah, so take it easy on yourself, do what works, and really, when it comes down to it, get yourself out in nature, if nothing else. You know, feel that will help you keep up this, like Celia is saying, being true to your philosophy. Get yourself outside, and you know, give yourself some time in nature, even if that's the only thing that's manageable right now. Make sure you are getting some fresh air, and you are getting a walk, and you are sitting in your yard in the grass, or whatever it is that you can do to connect with nature, and then maybe just sharing that with your class somehow. But you know, just kind of continuing with that kaupapa in any way that you can, but don't feel bad if it doesn't look like, you know, I wish it looked like a Pinterest page at my house, but it just doesn't. That's our time outside these days. My kids are, otherwise they're inside on their tablets doing their schoolwork. It's often on tablets. So just making that space for them to lay in the grass while I read the book. That's all I've got going on.
That's a great tip. Thank you, Anne. Fantastic. And Kirsten.
I think Anne sort of covered it in the last part of what she was saying, was that this is a time that everyone's doing things virtually online, and this is a whole new frontier as a teacher or as a parent, and that just to be gentle with yourself and to be kind, and make sure that you're doing stuff that fills up your bucket so that you can pass things on to others. Try and do some of what we've been saying to you. You know, can you allocate an hour? Can you try and allocate this, you know, day that you're trying to put out there for parents, and be okay if no one does it. Be okay that what you're putting out there is the best that you can do at this time and place. And that's all that we can do as teachers, and you will be. That's the other thing, that what you're doing now is really, really helpful. But if we know that nature is that third teacher. In fact, it's the first teacher, really. If we follow a lot of what nature represents to us and what we identify with it, it can teach us so much without us having to do so much. So just, I guess my top tip is just to try new things, try and get it out there, and hope that people pick up on it, because that's all that we can try and do, and that everyone's doing the best that they can. So that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kirsten. And I think just with the time, I'll just say I agree with everything the other lady said. You know, we're all on a very similar page with all this stuff. And I think that the key message, I think you just, said it really well there, Kirsten, was just to try. I think making sure that you are considering this when you are doing your planning, or when you're sending out emails or offering ideas to your students. And I guess I'm talking, 5+ there, because we do have, some kindergarten teachers watching this. Kindergarten teachers, you're doing great. Just let them play. And I would love to say let them play for school. But I know as teachers, you are feeling the need to be able to offer something. So continue to offer, keep true to yourself. And we hope that you have got some really good ideas, or just some things to really ponder and think about, whether they're specific ideas or just things that you could go away and read or research. And then, maybe weave that into your planning while we are in this virtual world. Brilliant. Okay, I think we will end it there. I really want to thank all three of you again. I have added in your websites, as I mentioned, in the post. So if anyone is wanting to get in touch with these ladies, please do. They're a fountain of knowledge, very wise women that we have here. They also all have Facebook pages. So if you want to follow them on Facebook, please do. They would love it. And I think our next talk is going to be on Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about mental health post-lockdown. I think that's going to be another really interesting one that leads on from this, because being out in nature is a really key way of improving our mental health and overall well-being, as I'm sure many of us have been able to identify through this lockdown time. So we'll be talking about that. Myself and Kirsten are on that on Tuesday. Right, otherwise, ladies, thank you very much, and I will say farewell from here.
Thank you, Celia.
Thank you.
See ya.